Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Cynthia Jujo, and on behalf of Parliamentary Network Africa, I'd like to welcome all of you to today's event. This Inception meeting is intended, first of all, to introduce you to the project. So, what is the project about? What would you benefit from the project? This meeting will cover all that. It is also intended to explain to you the benefits that you derive from the project, such as periodic legislative alerts, learning and networking sessions on bills and other papers that are presented to Parliament. And this presentation will be done by our Executive Director, Mr. Sami Obeng, who is also in the meeting with us. And as the presentation is going on, I would entreat all of us to send in our comments and our questions so that we can work within the stipulated time frame for this meeting. Thank you so much for coming. And I would now hand over to our Executive Director to take over with his presentation.
Thank you very much, Cynthia, for the quick introduction. Good afternoon to everybody. Just as has been indicated, my name is Sami Obeng. I lead the team here at Parliamentary Network Africa. Parliamentary Network Africa is a civil society parliamentary monitoring organization, and we have put together this initiative titled the Private Sector Parliament Forum, PSPF, for which we have called this afternoon's meeting. And it's our hope that in the next couple of minutes, we will be able to explain to you what this PSPF initiative is all about and how we seek to partner with private sector to have a very fruitful working arrangement around private sector related matters and the legislature of Parliament. And so let me welcome you once again. This is the Inception meeting, and I'll take you through a few slides which seeks to explain the various issues that will be up for discussion in the course of our session today. Now, the outline for this afternoon's session, we'll be speaking about, of course, the main reason why we're here, the PSPF concept. We will be giving you a brief background of Parliamentary Network Africa, PN Africa, and why we have congregated this meeting and how it relates to the work that we do as an organization. The presentation will also look at Parliament and private sector legislation in the past and how that has informed the reason for this PSPF initiative. And then, of course, we will have some time to take some questions and answer them, and also brief you on what the next steps are beyond today's meeting. And we are very grateful that you were able to join us. Of course, we value your time. And so, whereas there are still a lot more people who are registered who may be joining in the course of the time, we think that it's important that we take off so that while they join, they catch up on where they joined from, so we don't spend too much of the time. But also to let you know that the video recording for today's meeting will be available, especially for those of you who may want to share it with colleagues in the office. Sorry, I get the information in the chat box that I'm not very audible enough. Benjamin sent that in. Is it a general problem? Can you all hear me, please? Maybe a feedback in the chat box will be useful so that I know that this is not a general problem. Cynthia and Co, can you hear me, please? Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. So I guess, Cynthia, you may want to engage. Okay, Wisdom 2 can hear. You may want to engage Benjamin.
Benjamin, okay.
and then we see how that can be rectified while I go ahead. And so, like I said, if you happen to lose your connection anytime, please do well to rejoin. The video will be made available at the end of the meeting so that you can be able to catch up with all the matters as were discussed. Now, this is essentially what our outline will look like today, and I implore you to take the journey with me, even as we go through that outline. So first of all, let me just briefly speak you through what we do at Parliamentary Network Africa. Parliamentary Network Africa is basically a parliamentary monitoring civil society organization. What does that mean? It means that our work hovers around the work that we all know that civil society organizations do, which is initiating projects and programs that are intended to serve the general population, of course, in a particular niche area, and our niche area is in parliamentary monitoring. So as an organization, we operate from Accra, but we work across the continent of Africa, working with parliaments across the continent on matters relating to legislative openness and how citizens can get closer to Parliament and understand what Parliament does. But essentially, our work can be classified under four main areas. First off is on parliamentary institutions, strengthening and support, where we work with parliaments, we work with committees of parliament, we work with members of parliament and departments of parliaments across the continent in promoting what we call parliamentary openness, which is the concept of ensuring that whatever happens in Parliament are made open, accessible to citizens, are made open and accessible to citizens, and also to ensure that capacity of members of Parliament, staff of Parliament are built and they are supported to deliver on their core mandate of legislation, of oversight, of ensuring that they represent the people who have actually elected them to Parliament. Our second area of work hovers around connecting citizens to Parliament. So after we have built institutional capacity, after we have strengthened and supported the institution of Parliament, we put in place initiatives that ensures that those of us who elected parliamentarians can connect with these parliamentarians more effectively, can get to know what they are doing, can get feedback from them, can receive reports and accountability from them for the mandates that they have been given. So that goes to our work in connecting citizens to Parliament, and how one of the ways that we do that goes to our third area of work, which is through media and access to parliamentary information. So working with the media, particularly pressmen and women who report from Parliament, we are able to make sure that parliamentary information are made accessible to various stakeholders at various times and for various purposes. Under our media and access to parliamentary information program area or thematic area, we also publish the parliamentary newspaper, which is a West Africa sub-regional newspaper that goes to members of parliament across all Anglophone West African countries as a tool that seeks to connect members of parliament to their people. So information on what happens in parliament are published in there, as well as concerns and feedback from citizens, from civil society, from business associations and what have you, are also published in there. And they go directly to the pigeonholes of members of parliament in the 5 West African Anglophone countries, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, and Liberia. And quite apart from that, it also serves as a platform that private sector organizations that actually have products and services that are directly targeted at members of parliament also take advantage to showcase their work, their products, and their services. And last but definitely not least in our scheme of work is our work on convening and knowledge management. In this area, we serve as a convener of civil society organizations, a convener of non-state actors to be able to build capacity, to be able to create platforms for shared learning, and so that they can be able to engage effectively with Parliament, especially for organizations and groups whose work are affected or impacted by what Parliament does. And it is on the back of this convening and knowledge management work stream that we have called this meeting, that we have actually launched the Private Sector Parliament Forum Initiative, PSPF, and we hope that in the course of the presentation and our discussion throughout today's session, you will be able to have a very deeper understanding and have an interest in wanting to engage with this particular initiative. So I'll move straight to present a little brief on the 7th Parliament and private sector legislation. So what I'm seeking to do with this is to be able to give you a bird's eye view of how much of private sector related work goes on in the Parliament of Ghana, and to be able to demonstrate the point that it behoves on private sector companies, business associations who were the main targets that were invited to this meeting, to see how on the back of this private sector parliament forum, we can be able to seek the interest of your member institutions, member companies, and get them information as goes on in Parliament. So, first of all, it is important to note that the just ended Parliament, which is the 7th Parliament, the Parliament that spanned from 2017 to 2020, passed as many as 121 bills. And this is just bills. So bills that eventually become acts of Parliament. 121 of such were passed in the last Parliament, which ended on the 7th of January this year. Now, this does not include and yes, Frederick, I see your question also about the slides. We will definitely share them. While the presentation also goes on, you can also share your questions and comments in the chat box, and we'll do well to address them. 121 of these bills were passed by Ghana's parliament, and this does not include other papers and instruments that gets laid in Parliament, other subsidiary legislation that gets laid in Parliament, other ratifications that are business. I mean, that happens in Parliament. Just bills, and we wanted to use the bill system to demonstrate the need for a proper connection between private sector and Parliament. Now, out of these 121 bills, over 50% of them, more than 60, were private sector related. Over 50% of them were private sector related. This goes to show that the government's legislative agenda for the past 4 years have been very heavy on private sector related matters, obviously because of the focus of the government. Now, and this is also true for a lot of the other things that gets done in Parliament. So whether it's statements that are being read on the floor of Parliament by members of Parliament, or it is questions that are asked by individual MPs or ministers of state to come and answer and all of that, many of these hover around livelihoods of the citizenry, for which borders on private sector and the kind of work that you do in the private sector. So I thought we will list some of these notable pieces of legislation that were passed during the tenure of the 7th Parliament, just so that you'll be able to appreciate some of these. So obviously the Good Old Companies Act was passed during the period of the 7th Parliament. We had the Corporate Insolvency Bill that got passed. There was the Ghana Enterprise Agency Bill that got passed into an act. Parliament, you have the likes of the Public-Private Partnership Bill that got passed, the Insurance Bill got passed, the Real Estate Authority Bill got passed. So if you want to vent into the area of property and all of that, which is also very important private sector as part of the components of production. Land bill was passed. Again, it speaks to the same point I was making earlier on. You had the likes of the borrowers and lenders bill that got passed during the period. You had the development finance institutions law that got passed during the period. Anti-money laundering Act got passed during that period. Cybersecurity Act got passed. You had, for those within the extractive industry, the likes of the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation Bill, which is seeking to set up the Petroleum Hub of Ghana. And you had the likes, for those who are also in agriculture-related businesses, you had the likes of the Plant Variety Protections Act, what's some commonly called the Plant Breeders Law, coming into force, and then the likes of the Tree Crop Development Authority bill that seeks to provide a regulatory framework or a legislative framework for tree crops such as cashew, coconut, and the likes. So this is just to give you 14 out of the many pieces of legislation that were passed that hovers around private sector, and just to be able to have an appreciation of what it is that I'm talking about. Now, in this regard, we have developed the Private Sector Parliament Forum concept or initiative, which is part of our communication advocacy, convening knowledge management efforts as an organization. And I will, in the next set of slides, walk you through what this means for the new parliament, the current parliament that is in force, which is the 8th parliament. I'll walk you through the objectives of this PSPF concept. I'll walk you through what the components are for this PSPF initiative, how we are seeking to partner with you to deliver this PSPF initiative. And then we will also talk about the next steps that beyond today's meeting, we are seeking to engage you on as far as this particular initiative is concerned. And so I will start with this new parliament. Now, it is instructive to note that all the private sector items that found themselves on the 7th Parliament's legislative agenda were not exhausted before elections. You know, just as some of you may know, when Parliament has started work on a particular piece of legislation, on a particular paper, on anything that is on its agenda, and that Parliament is unable to exhaust all of it, and the Parliament expires, that Parliament expires with the work that has been done with it, and the new Parliament will have to pick it up. That is, if the new government reintroduces that piece of legislation to Parliament, and they start the process all over again. And Parliament always publishes its legislative agenda, which gives an indication of the kinds of laws that the bills, that draft legislation that the executive branch or government seeks to submit before Parliament. And so from this agenda, the last agenda that was published by the last Parliament, you'll notice that they still had quite a number of private sector legislation that the government of the day, of the time, were looking to bring to Parliament, but for the fact that the tenure expired. What this means is that with the 2020 elections that saw the same government or political party retaining power, what it means is that 2021 to 2024 may follow along the same trend, where there will be some more private sector items on government's legislative agenda that will be coming to Parliament. It is our expectation, of course, that those ones that were on the agenda which could not get exhausted will be brought back and new ones will come on. Obviously, for a government that is also private sector minded, and all of the things that are happening within our country, including matters relating to the African continental free trade area that is headquartered in Ghana and what have you. Now, In all of this also, it is important to note that the current 8th Parliament has some very interesting dynamics, which, of course, this is not a political gathering, so to speak, but I know that we all follow the news very well, and so we know the dynamics of how the numbers are almost evenly split along the two major dominant political parties, how the Speaker of the Parliament is from a different political party from the ruling government. So this new parliament is heavily different from all of the 7 previous parliaments that have been constituted under the 1992 Constitution of Ghana. And this dynamics means that all stakeholders will have to follow this current parliament very closely. And of course, one set of stakeholders who cannot afford not to follow this current 8th Parliament closely is you in the private sector. Another thing is that towards the end of the just ended Parliament, the concept of introduction of private members' bills, which is the opportunity that individual members of Parliament now have, working in partnership with civil society, working in partnership with business associations to introduce legislation to Parliament for it to be passed, was also mooted. And in fact, the first set of private members' bills were actually passed by the 7th Parliament before it expired. So what it means is that now, not only will the government be introducing bills to Parliament, but you will also have individual members of Parliament promoting bills to Parliament, of course, working with various stakeholders. What this means is that as private sector, you have to watch the space and watch it more closely. But the big question is, how do you watch that space and watch it more closely together with the work that you already have doing, which is running private businesses or running your business associations. Obviously not a parliamentary monitoring organization. That's not part of your work. So how do you monitor this closely? How do you ensure that you don't only get to hear about this tall list of bills that have been passed by Parliament only when you're having presentations like this and the list that I shared, or only after they've been passed and they are in the media space and they are being discussed, so that you don't get the opportunity to even engage with the process? How do we do that? So that then brings me to the objectives of the Private Sector Parliament Forum, the PSPF concept. What are the objectives? Why have we as PN Africa mooted this idea, and why are we doing this? So this initiative is actually informed by the parliamentary monitoring and information sharing gap that exists on private sector related issues. As a civil society organization that has, for the want of a better word, a stranglehold on Parliament and what goes on there, because we have presence in the House with research team members, monitoring the Ghana Parliament on a daily basis, of course, as part of our work across the continent. We notice that whereas there is a lot that goes on in Parliament that hovers around private sector related matters, like I have shared with you in previous slides, there is really information gap. Information that does not go out there to private sector as swiftly, as you may want. And sometimes when it does, the timing is actually wrong. A case in point was that in 2016, for us here at Parliamentary Network Africa, we convened a training workshop for banks and specialized deposit-taking institutions. And this was when the Banks and Specialized Deposit-Taking Institutions Bill was before the Parliament of the time, and also the Deposit Protection Bill was before the Parliament of the time. And we discovered that for the many banks and specialized deposit-taking institutions that participated in that workshop, it was very obvious that, but for the workshop, a lot of them may not even know that these bills were on the floor of Parliament, but for the workshop, they wouldn't have learned about ways that they could engage with the Committee of Parliament working on the bill, and how they as major stakeholders can contribute to the lawmaking process which is also a very, very important aspect of citizens' participation in lawmaking. And this gap has existed all through, of course, as PN Africa, as an organization over the years, we have tried to work with individual associations, individual groups to kind of help them address that gap and that need for their respective associations and groups. Apart from that, PN Africa also receives many requests for private sector legislative information from various companies and business associations separately over the years. So we receive emails, almost on a daily basis with one company asking, we hear that this particular bill is in Parliament. Is it true? We want to have a good understanding of it. Can we get a copy of the bill? What is Parliament discussing? Is there anything on agriculture that is before Parliament and all of that? And yeah, as our civic duty, we try very much to answer as many of these inquiries and calls that we receive on a regular basis as possible. And that has informed the need for a mechanism that allows for this thing to be done on a larger scale to benefit more individual companies, more associations, more private sector players, because people have business interests in Ghana. They live both in Ghana and abroad. They have business interest in Ghana. However, there is no mechanism in place that provides for them timely updates to their leaders, the leaders of these private companies and business associations, on all of the happenings in the legislature that affects or has the potential to affect their businesses. So I still use the Banks and Specialized Deposit Taking Institutions Bill as a case in point. Remember that this was the same bill that, when passed into law, became an act, was used for the financial sector cleanup. In fact, at that training that I talk about, we also spoke about the Securities Industries Bill, which regulates the work of the investment companies and those within the securities industry. And these laws combined, constituted the legislative framework that were used to do the financial sector cleanup that saw many, many companies collapse, which means that laws that get passed in Parliament have consequences on private businesses and their work. And so the objective of this Private Sector Parliament Forum PSPF initiative by us at PN Africa is to provide timely information to private sector leaders on laws, on policies, and ratifications that gets passed by the Parliament of Ghana, particularly those ones that border on private businesses. So that's the bottom line. That's what we are seeking to do with this PSPF forum initiative. Now, having explained to you what the situation has been in the past, what the objectives are for this concept, what then are some of the components? What will this initiative be doing? What are the components of this PSPF initiative? So the following are some of the things that are part of this initiative. First of all, this is an initiative that will be running for the entire duration of this 8th Parliament. So from this year, 2021, right through to 2024, we'll be running this initiative. And it starts with a series of inception meetings like what we are having today to explain the initiative to you, to build the necessary partnerships and collaborations to be able to have this going on. Then upon resumption of Parliament for their next meeting, as you may be aware, whilst Parliament resumed on the 7th of January and had their work, including vetting of ministers and passing the budget and all of that for this year, they've gone on recess. They are resuming in the month of May. And so from next month, by which time all of these inception meetings and engagements would have been over, we'll be starting. The initiative will have a component like weekly email legislative alerts. So every week that Parliament sits, organizations that are on this PSPF platform will be receiving a legislative alert, which essentially is a summary of the things that happened in Parliament for the week, those ones that border on private sector especially, and those that are expected in the coming week. So that at least, a one-pager, two-pager can equip you on what's happening in Parliament and make things relatively easy for you. Because we know that your compliance department, we know that your legal department, we know that the CEOs and leadership management of your companies that makes up your various business associations and all are interested in these things. So weekly email alerts will be coming on that. Then on a monthly basis, we'll be organizing monthly virtual learning and networking sessions. So for example, we could pick up a particular private sector bill that is in Parliament, and we'll do an online session like we are doing on Zoom, where you can connect from the comfort of your offices on a particular bill that is in Parliament. What is the general overview of that particular bill? Then, of course, based on the various, sectors that the bill deals with, we can move it onto more physical training sessions like we've been doing in the past on these bills, where experts will actually be training your staff on the bill, what it contains. Then we can congregate into following up and supporting various associations and companies in engaging with parliamentary committees that are working on these bills and other legislative, agenda items. So bills, papers, parliamentary agenda, there will be monthly sessions that will be virtual sessions that will come up every month to talk about some of these things. And that's open to members, organizations that are part of this PSPF initiative. Once you are a member association or company that is on this PSPF initiative, you have access to the PN-Africa's general newsletter, which talks about legislative work across the continent of Africa. And then, of course, our website that provides information about parliaments across the continent. PSPF concept also have the component of an annual event throughout this period, which seeks to connect private sector to members of parliament and to committees of parliament for networking purposes, but also to discuss, very important nuanced issues that affect the private sector and how the legislative branch can play a role in that. So this could be annual balls, it could be annual speaker series, it could be whichever format that is trendy and of importance, breakfast meetings, to meet up with parliamentarians and parliamentary committees on such matters. Another component of this PSPF concept is our research team, a very strong research department here at Parliamentary Network Africa, can also provide support to various member organizations, member associations on your need to access parliamentary information. Like I said from the very beginning, we've received numerous calls in the past. Can we get a copy of this bill? What does the memorandum of this bill say? Can we get a copy of this material in Parliament? Can you please help us assess X or Y? And so all of this thing will be congregated so that as a member of the platform, you can have relationship officers, so to speak, as part of our research teams to provide you with those support. And then, like I spoke to you from the very beginning, another component of it is that once we publish the parliamentary newspaper, which goes directly to all members of parliament in Ghana and also to MPs or members of parliament in the 4 other Anglophone West African countries, it provides an opportunity for private sector companies that do works and have products and services that are directly targeted at this category of people in society to, as it were, showcase your work through the parliamentary newspaper concept. So these items as listed, 6 items as listed, are the components that make up this PSPF initiative, and it will be running, like I said, for the 4-year period that this parliament exists. And of course, we hope that the success of it will motivate us as an organization to continue to partner with you and work with you to have this going on as we move forward. So how do we get to partner with you on this? How do we get to work with you on this initiative? That's the next issue that I want to briefly talk about. So first of all, it's important to note that, just as you are aware, as a civil society organization, we run these initiatives, projects, and programs purely on donor-based funding, donations and support, on contributions from participating organizations that require specific services that gets rendered to them. But particularly for this PSPF initiative, we feel inclined to introduce it even now that it is not funded yet, which means that getting all of the logistics, the human resource to be able to work on this would require that we work together with partners to be able to achieve this, especially if indeed it is a need, you know, of the partners. Now, what it means then is that this forum is actually open to subscribing organizations. And what do we mean by subscribing organizations? A subscribing organization is basically an organization that says that yes, the nature of our work as an association or as an individual private business requires that we get regular updates from Parliament, and so we are officially sending an email to confirm that we want to be on the platform. Those subscribing organizations get to benefit from our legislative alerts, get to benefit from some aspect of our learning meetings, get to benefit from receiving our newsletters and checking out some of the things that we have on our website by way of access to information on parliamentary work. However, the other category of organizations who are also subscribing organizations, but those who donate to this cause, then get add-on services, which obviously will come as a result of extra work that needs to be done. And I must say that the non-donating subscribing organizations may have some of these services for a particular period of time, of course, as our internal resource for now will be able to allow us. But for those who are part of those donating to our work, maybe as part of your marketing efforts or as part of your corporate social responsibility efforts or what have you, whatever resource that gets donated to this PSPF platform is provided back to the organization 100% in advert spaces or spaces in the parliamentary newspaper that goes to the Anglophone, 5 Anglophone West African countries. So essentially, organizations may want to consider this as part of their marketing budget or corporate social responsibility, because eventually, they get spaces to promote their work and to talk about their work in the newspaper. So the equivalent of how much you contribute to this effort goes towards advert spaces. Apart from that, it is for these donating organizations, supporting organizations that get our research team to do the dedicated specific service provision for access to detailed parliamentary information. So going forward, once you are a member of the platform that is supporting the work, you are able to send in your request specific information that you require, and we will do our very best to leverage on our existence within the parliamentary space to provide those information and to guide you through matters relating to parliamentary work and how it affects your work. Of course, these supporting organizations are those who get to benefit from having seats in our annual events that get organized for networking purposes, the in-person events that get organized for networking purposes and for knowledge sharing and information sharing purposes. And then as a source of accountability, because for us as civil society, once we demand accountability from duty bearers, we also make an effort to ensure that accountability is an important part of the work that we do. Donating organizations receive the annual reports on these PSPF concepts, which actually catalogs those who supported the work, how much support was received, how much work was done with it, what the impact has been, who benefited from what, and what have you. So this goes to the support organization. So it is at this stage that I would like to draw the curtains, having explained to you how we hope that you'll be able to partner with us. And I'm hoping that the questions, the conversation that follows through will be able to help us understand what we can do together. So if you're a business association, how we can engage beyond today. But for those of you individual organizations and companies, by way of next steps, one of the very easy things you can just do is to send us an email, expressing an interest to colleague Cynthia, who coordinates this work with the Communication and Advocacy Department, info@parliamentafrica.com, info@parliamentafrica.com, and Cynthia will be, of course, the same email address that I think sent you the link to this meeting, and she'll be kind enough to respond to you, of course, if this has gotten to do with sending in which team members you would want to be on the platform so they can be receiving the weekly legislative alerts, their email contact details, what kind of tailor-made needs that you have within your organization, how you may want to support the work that we are doing, and what have you. The conversation can go on in that regard. So beyond this meeting, one of the immediate next steps that you could take is to send that email to parliamentafrica.com, and we're willing to hear you out. So on that note, I thank you very, very much for your kind attention. At this stage, I am very willing to engage with your questions, comments, even on matters that agitate your mind, so far as parliamentary and your work is concerned, as private sector, some of the challenges you've faced in the past, any questions more on parliamentary, we'll be more than glad to address them. For those who joined the meeting late, I will be my colleague Cynthia with the email address that I shared, or even through my own email address, which is on the bottom of the current slide that is showing s@parliamentafrica.com. We will be sharing with you the full video from today's session. At least there is one thing that COVID did for us. It allowed us to be able to document some of these things and share them widely, so you can also share with your colleagues in the offices who may need to hear this good news, so to speak. We'll share the slides as has been requested. And if your contact connection fluctuated during the period, you can be able to also listen to the whole thing properly again. So thank you all very, very much for your kind attention. At this stage, I open up for any questions, comments. I guess, Cynthia, people are allowed to simply show by hand or unmute or even put it in the chat box to ask a question or request any information. And I will be happy to do that. We are hoping that this meeting will last just an hour. So the hour we are hoping to use anytime thereafter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam, for the presentation. Kindly unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, or you can send your questions to the chat box. I'll gather that and send them across. So we are waiting for your questions and your remarks.
I see Frederick is unmuted. I don't know if he did so to speak. Yes, Frederick, please go ahead. And please, for the purposes of the meeting, because obviously we couldn't have the time to do introductions, you may want to probably introduce yourself briefly, and then let's say Frederick.
Yes, this one is not a question, but just to congratulate you for the forum created for private sector to have a voice in this parliamentary affairs. And this will go a long way to promote our relationship with the parliamentary institutions, and then help us also to grow our businesses. So thank you very much for the forum that you have created. Thank you.
Awesome, Frederick. And if you'll be kind enough to let us know which organization you belong to.
Yes, I am a member of the Dangwe West Mango Farmers Association,
right,
located in Agomeda.
Very well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so beyond Frederick, if there are any questions, comments, I see KY, you have your hand up. And then I'll come to Wisdom. Yes, KY.
Yes, I just want to introduce myself.
Yes, please.
Good. My name is Kweku Yeboah. I'm representing Sea Freight Pineapple Exporters of Ghana, SPEC. Just for introduction sake.
Okay, very well. Thank you so very much. Wisdom, let's hear you out.
All right. So thank you, Sammy.
Can you hear me?
Sorry. It looks like you are not. Yeah, we heard you. We heard you very well. Okay, Wisdom, let's take you now, please.
All right. So good afternoon, all. Sam, I think that this is a good initiative, and we've been having some discussions around this, I think, some time back.
Yeah, Wisdom, you would also have to introduce yourself.
All right. So Wisdom Adongo is my name, and I work with Private Enterprise Federation. Right. Yeah. So I think that the most important thing that to me is being able to actually identify the bills and then start engaging with the respective select committees even before work begins on these bills. I think what has been happening in the past is that private sector will get going at the end of the program when everything has been settled and the parliament has passed it, which is not so good for us because we have to make some inputs and make sure that whatever bill that comes out is in the best interest of private sector. And we are the people who would know best what will suit us. So I think that the weekly and the monthly updates that we provided, I think is a step in the right direction. I don't know if that would act as a kind of a tracking system, a bill tracking system, so that not only for you to just provide the update, but we can be able to see from day one when it started to the last day that it has been. So I think that is my thought.
Okay, so that's very well noted. Thank you for the message. Of course, Private Enterprises Federation for us at PN Africa has been a long-standing partner on matters like these. Certainly, you can be rest assured that the entire process of the Private Sector Parliament Forum is meant to have these engagements. And Kingsley, I've identified your hand. I'll call you shortly. Is meant to engage with the processes of lawmaking, from start to finish. So once you are on the forum, once we are providing these alerts, forum members and associations who have specific interest in these, things, we can congregate, discuss them, channel the concerns to members of parliament and parliamentary committees that are working on these. And then we would also provide that interfacing, as we have always done in the past for these groups. You asked about tracking. Yes, bill tracking is one of the works that we do and will be part of the research component of the Private Sector Parliament Forum initiative. What that means is that when a bill is laid in Parliament, between when it gets laid and when it gets passed, all of the changes that gets done by the Parliament of Ghana, those who are subscribing and supporting members of this platform will be receiving trackers that shows the changes that have taken place, what has changed, what has been amended, what's still being discussed, and what have you, as part of the process. So yes, that is certainly a part of it. Now let's go. Let me move to Kingsley now, please. Kingsley, you may want to unmute and then.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sammy. My name is Kingsley Lau, and I work for the Ghana Employers Association.
Right.
I first of all commend the Parliamentary Network Africa for this particular initiative, and we are very much happy to partner and work with you in this regard. And as advocates for the creation of enabling environments for businesses to thrive in general, I think there's a need for us to step up in being proactive instead of reactive, always reacting to some of these bills after they've been passed. And I think my brother Wisdom Adongo did touch base on some of these concerns. How we could get access to some of these bills at its inception stages, and how we could also contribute effectively to making sure that the bills passed do not have negative or adverse effects on businesses in general in the country, and how we could also work with the Network Africa to make sure updated information is always channeled to member organizations, and also keeping them abreast of what exactly happens in Parliament. So I would want to commend the PN Africa for this particular initiative, and I'm happy to be part of this arrangement. Later, I would write formally to you as indicated in your presentation. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kingsley. And yes, you were very spot on. The essence of this is for more proactiveness in following the work of Parliament as relates to private sector, rather than the reactive approach of only hearing it in the news, and then all you have to do is now rush to compliance-related matters. Eunice, I saw your question. I have answered it in the chat box. You were asking whether the team is able to share copies of acts that gets accented to. And like I said, on this Parliament, private sector Parliament forum, for all the bills that private sector bills that we follow, we track, and which gets passed. Obviously, we follow it right through to the level where they get accented to, and then the acts, when the acts are ready, for the public. One of the things that is very interesting about acts of Parliament after the laws have been passed is that for those of you who have engaged with the process for some time, you would notice that when a law gets passed, it takes some time, quite a number of weeks, sometimes months, for Parliament to clean up, so to speak, clean up the bill with all the changes that has been made, and then forward it to the presidency for the president to accent to it, and then it takes some time until the assembly press also prints it and makes it available to the public. And sometimes it becomes a very difficult task. So what we try to do is that during the tracking stage, we track the bill from start to finish. So by the time the bill gets passed, the very day that Parliament passes it, you can be rest assured that we will have what we call the tracked version, which will show all of the changes that has been made. We have a system in-house that is used to track, to show all the changes that happened to the bill, what's changed. And you can see it's like a regular document that shows what was cancelled, what was added, what was taken out, and all of that, which can serve as filling in the gap between when the bill gets passed by Parliament and when it's actually made available on the market. So that for compliance purposes, for institutional capacity building purposes, for tweaking your internal systems to remain compliant to the Act, you can use some of those things until the public officials make the official copies ready for us. So this is also a novelty. It doesn't exist in our country. And so we provide that so that people can always be abreast with. Now, Richard, I see your question in the comments box. You said great initiative for the private sector. You're asking what happens after 2024. That's the first part of your question. And this is from Richard Nate from the FAGE. I think FAGE is the Federation of Associations of Ghanaian Exporters. So what happens is that because the current Parliament spans until 2024, of course, as an organization, we like to run our projects on a timeline basis. We are willing and hoping that this will be very successful, that we can roll it on for every new Parliament that comes on. So we are very willing to roll it on even bigger and better going forward. And you're asking how much does it cost to subscribe to the system? So, when we say subscription here, we are talking really about supporting our work. So For some associations and organizations, supporting our work may be partnering with us so that we can jointly fundraise for specific aspects of the work. For some, it could mean donating to our work in cash and in kind and technical support, whatever it is. It's on an as and when, basis. So there's no real floor or ceiling amount. However, whatever gets donated, is essentially what is used to provide you the necessary support for your work. So let's say, I indicated from the presentation that there is 100% rollover of your support through art spaces. So let's say an organization pledges that, okay, every year we want to support this initiative with 1,000 USD, 10,000 Ghana cedis, whatever it is. What it means is that that automatically gives the equivalent of that amount in advert spaces in the parliamentary newspaper. But apart from that, that also contributes to, when we do the quantification for the physical events, how much seats, we can negotiate with the organization to attend the physical events of government battery. How much seats we can negotiate with the organization to attend the physical event, and then also relating to the technical research support that gets provided. All of that gets quantified. So it is based on, institutional support. On a case-by-case basis, we are very willing and able to discuss so that we can be able to support each other to sustain this. And this is purely for sustainability, because without your support and your partnership, we cannot sustain this. I noticed that the same question was asked by Anthony Dote from PSG Ghana on the cost of subscription. I think I've answered that. And you're asking whether it's going to be annually or yes. So we'll very much appreciate, of course, we identify your support and contribution on an annual basis. So, an organization may choose to support the work of this PSPF initiative by a certain, arrangement on an annual basis. And of course, at the end of the year, we receive the annual reports summing up what we've been able to do. And we hope to satisfy you well enough so that the relationship can be maintained in subsequent years. Then someone sending a message with a Galaxy Grand Prime Plus says, Sami, please, are we the private sector going to pay anything for this information and meeting? Are we going to channel our information and questions to you through the parliament? Okay. Unfortunately, I'm unable to address you by name because your device name is what is being used. So this initiative is being coordinated from the Office of Parliamentary Network Africa. What it means is that subscribing organizations, like I've explained earlier on, subscribing organizations, as I've explained earlier on, will be receiving these information through us, because we will be doing the compilation, the sieving, and sometimes even the simplification of parliamentary information. Sometimes it can be very technical, so that you can be able to better appreciate and understand these things and relate with it with your work. This obviously comes to organizations that support our work, and I've explained the support system to you, and it is our expectation that beyond this meeting, by way of next steps, we can receive emails from you and discuss specifics, on which organization, what are the real needs, more of a needs assessment to be able to know what you may require of us and how you could also support the work, and then we work together collectively for this to happen. Thank you very much. Are there any others that may want to ask a question or pass a comment? Yeah, about 5 minutes outside our regular time. We'll probably just crave your indulgence to take the next 5 minutes to wrap up. So if there are any questions, comments, just show my hand using the show hand button or unmute. I would recognize you, and then we can hear from you, or you can put your comment or question in the chat box. Okay, so I guess, Cynthia, my work is very well done. I think that we have I've exhausted my time, And let me thank you all very, very much for making time to join us in today's meeting. The email address that sent you the connection link for today's meeting is the same email address you can revert to in, engaging and having a conversation around the subject matter and how we can work together. Feel free to connect with us, and we'll be more than happy to engage with you and to see how we can have this going together. We are grateful that you took time off your busy schedule to join us. And for those who get to join this amazing forum, you can be rest assured that we'll have a fantastic working time together for the next 4 years, even beyond. I thank you all very much. Cynthia, over to you.
Thank you all for coming. Hello, I think someone wanted to speak.
No, I just want to respond as you wrap up. I'm open to respond. So it's not a comment.
All right.
All
Thank you, Fred.
Mm.
Thank you all very, very much for coming.
You're welcome.
Please send in your emails, info@parliamentafrica.com. I'll be expecting them. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.